Let's go live to Toronto in Canada, and there's reporter Lainey Louie, who is outraged by all of this. And Lainey, we'll come to that in just a moment, but in your role as a journalist, I think the public here in Britain, it all started out so well. She did a walk around Nottingham. Harry is probably the most likeable of the royals. And then all these seeming restrictions came on board. Don't take pictures of me. We're not going to tell you who the godparents of our children are. We're not even going to tell you the name of our new pet dog. And it seems to be a bit distant, especially since they are taking money from the public purse. So in your journalistic capacity, could you perhaps offer her some PR advice?
I don't know that she needs PR advice from me. I would like to offer some advice to the British media, because all the things that you listed about why people are upset, like the demands for privacy and the spending, if there is to be criticism, I don't know why she's bearing 85 to 95% of it. She is married to a member of the royal family. His name is Prince Harry. And so I don't know why she's taking the lion's share of whether or not it's valid criticism, why it's landing on her. That's the question I would have for those in the British media who are insisting that they're treating her fairly.
Well, you do know why it's landing at her. If you have an uppy attitude, you're only through the door 2 minutes, and suddenly you're sitting at Wimbledon and your royal protection people are saying, no photograph. You would be the first. If that was somebody in Canada, you would be writing, they're right up their own backside.
I don't know. I don't
know
if I don't know that I would want Beyonce to have somebody jamming his phone up in her face when she was watching Wimbledon.
The phone wasn't in her face.
I think the dude was like right up in there.
Okay.
And there are lots of photographers standing around, professional photographers.
Those with a job, surely.
So this person, if it's a viewer of the match, I don't know why he has to run up and get the phone.
But however, interesting to your reaction.
Can I ask you, Lainey, have you met her? Did you meet Meghan?
I've met her once.
And what did you make of her then?
I thought she was really nice. We had a nice 15, 20-minute conversation about our dogs. She had 2 dogs at the time.
Did she tell you the name of the dogs? It's all changed now. You don't get to know the dog's name nowadays.
She did. She did tell me the name. It was before, obviously, she met Prince Harry. So yeah, I knew the names of the dogs. We had a breed in common. She's a beagle. I have 2 beagles. So we had a pleasant conversation over dinner.
Okay.
I think as well, it's the amount, Eamon mentioned the public purse there. They're living in Frogmore Cottage. The estimated bill is coming to about £3 million. Can you understand why a lot of the British public are saying, hang on, we're paying for you, we're paying for the refurbishment of your home. Why can't you then share with us, you know, the name of your dogs? Why can't you allow somebody to take a selfie if they're nearby? Nobody's really hurting you when we're basically paying for your lifestyle.
I think that it's completely valid to have criticisms about how the British royal family spends money. And Will and Kate have also refurbished Kensington Palace, and they spent a lot of money on that too. I do think that there's a line, like, you know, do we need to know what toilet paper they use? What benefit to us is it to know the names of the dogs? There was a lot of criticism about the christening and the first photos, but when you think about it,
why not? But why not? What harm does it do? I understand what you're saying, you know, well, who cares? But then some people saying, well, I'd just quite like to know. What's the big secret?
I think the big secret is the dogs are like one thing. The children, you know the names of the children. You've seen the picture of the child at the christening. I think what people don't like is change. Everything that's been complained about is we're not getting the pictures. We're not being invited to the introduction of the baby. But weren't we? Didn't we get the pictures of Prince Louis? Didn't we get the portraits? Weren't they released? Didn't we get to see the christening photos? So everything that was complained about being held back was actually delivered to us.
Yeah.
Per usual.
But it doesn't seem to be, Lainey, and I want to bring in, I want you to stay there, Lainey, and I want to bring in our royal historian here as well. But I think the thing, Lainey, I'm trying to say is it doesn't seem to be done in a willing, joyous, inclusive way. And Kate, I want to ask you from your point of view, is that a change in mood, in tact? And I think the point is there is this tremendous love for them, this tremendous joy to welcome her in. And now people are thinking, oh, this is not being reciprocated.
Well, I think there's been a lot of criticism of Meghan from the beginning. I mean, we know that the first time we realised Prince Harry was actually dating Meghan was because there was the press release from Kensington Palace saying she'd suffered racism, there'd been people invading her privacy. So pretty much, I feel there hasn't been a change. I think Meghan has suffered criticism right from the beginning. There was a sort of flowering of happiness around the wedding, but she's had a tough time the whole time. And I think Lainey's got a lot of really important points there. And for me, everyone who marries into the royal family has a tough time. Prince Philip was called a Nazi, even though he'd fought on the Allied side. We know what happened to Princess Diana. And Kate had a lot of criticism in her family. But Meghan's having it the worst of all. There's all things that she does that all the other royals have done, she is criticised for. And whether it's...
Do you think the fact she's American doesn't help her?
I think
that we kind of go, this is an American who's come over here and taken our Prince Harry.
Well, you know, Prince Harry, you know, right from when Prince Harry was born, there were articles about who he was going to marry. And they were all aristocrats for the castle. And Prince Harry has chosen someone completely different. He's chosen an American lady, a woman with a career, a woman of colour. And that, I think, is his choice, and we have to respect that. And he obviously adores her. I mean, I am a big defender of Meghan. I think she's a wonderful breath of fresh air. And
Isn't it too easy, though, for people to say, oh, it's racist that people don't like her?
Racist.
You know, that it was very much embraced that she was of mixed race, mixed heritage, that was coming into our royal family. That seemed to be embraced at the time. Is it now not an easy excuse? Any criticism, people say, oh, well, it's racist.
Well, I think there was racism from the beginning. Her mother, there was talk of her being straight out of Compton when she lived in LA. I think there has been racism, and people talk about Meghan, they use words like outsider when they never said that about Kate, and they use words like different. And Prince Harry was talking yesterday about unconscious racism, saying that people say, oh, I'm not racist, but I see her as different. And I do think some of the things that have been said, I think there's anti-Americanism, I think there's sexism, but I think there's a lot of racism.
But
Lainey felt there that she couldn't offer any PR advice, and I think people want to love them, want to embrace them, people want to feel their affection reciprocated. Could you offer, how do you think this could be made better?
Well, I think Meghan's done some wonderful things. I think the Together cookbook was fantastic. I think when she went to the project that worked with the sex workers, I think what she's doing with Smart Works, the charity, I think her charity, her patronage, the work she's doing, I think what she's doing is really incredible. And I think the Vogue edition looks fantastic, very empowering. I think she's doing a lot of, yes, I think there are a few mistakes, maybe Wimbledon, but you think about, you know, the Wimbledon photos, but what you think about what Kate suffered, topless photos of her in a swimming costume, what Princess Diana suffered, and how Prince Harry is so protective of her, you can see how he panics about media intrusion and worries if it's true that they've had people trying to break into their house just to get pictures. I think, and we've got features saying that because Meghan eats avocados, there's a massive drought. Well, there are many people who eat avocados.
Squaddies, sit down, because I need to walk you through a panel segment that is honestly more relevant today than the day it aired. It's an old clip, but I promise you every single argument being thrown at Meghan Sussex right now traces back to this exact script. Same talking points, same double standards, same tired playbook, and by the end of this video you're going to see exactly why the institution, the rota and the derangers still haven't figured out how to move past it. Let's set the scene. You've got a host. I'll just call him the anchor, because honestly his name matters less than his method. And he opens by reading out what is basically a charge sheet against Meghan. Not questions. Accusations dressed up as questions. He runs through it fast, almost like he doesn't want anyone to have time to actually think about what he's saying. The list goes like this. She did a walkabout without shaking every hand the way people apparently expected. Harry, who he claims used to be the most likeable royal, now has restrictions around him. They wouldn't release the names of the godparents. They wouldn't announce the dog's name right away. And then the line he clearly thinks is his knockout punch. They're doing all of this while still taking money from the public purse. That's the setup. Grievance, 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 follow the money. Classic tabloid architecture. And he turns to one of the panellists, I'll call her the commentator, and asks with this faux sincerity whether she can offer Meghan some PR advice. Squaddies, This is the moment. This is the receipt I want you to screenshot. Because instead of taking the bait, she flips the entire premise back on him. She says she doesn't think Meghan needs PR advice at all. If anyone needs advice, she says, it's the British media. And then she does something almost nobody on these panels ever does. She takes every single item on his list, the privacy, the spending, all of it, and asks one simple question. Why is Meghan absorbing somewhere between 85 and 95% of the criticism for decisions that were made jointly with her husband? A literal prince of the realm, a man who was standing right next to her for every single one of these choices. That's not a dodge. That is the entire argument, delivered in one sentence. If this was really about constitutional spending or royal protocol, the criticism would land evenly. It would land on the institution. It would land on Harry. It doesn't. It lands on her. Every time. And once you see that asymmetry, squaddies, you cannot unsee it. It shows up in literally every segment, like this one, every single time. So the anchor pushes back with the Wimbledon story. You know the one, where a fan shoved a phone toward Meghan's face at the tennis, and security stepped in. He frames this as her team being oversensitive, and even says, you'd be the first to complain if it were you. But listen to what the commentator says back, because this is where the panel accidentally exposes its own bias in real time. There were professional photographers stationed around that court specifically to capture those moments. That was their job. So why, she asks, does a random spectator need to run up and stick a phone in a woman's face to get a personal photo? That's not paranoia. That's basic personal space. And it's the exact same personal space every single other member of that family has been given without question for decades. Nobody ever called the late Queen standoffish because the public couldn't ambush her at a sporting event. The rules only became a talking point the second it was Meghan enforcing them. Then we get to the dog story, and squaddies, I actually find this one almost funny if it weren't so revealing. The commentator shares that she once met Meghan personally, a warm 15-20-minute conversation about their shared love of beagles, and Meghan told her the dog's name directly before the royal wedding, before any of the so-called secrecy the anchor is complaining about. So the scandal was never that Meghan is secretive by nature. The scandal is that once she married into an institution that is obsessed with controlling image and information, that institution's own instinct for secrecy got projected onto her, and the press decided that was suspicious, instead of just standard operating procedure for every family member who's ever married in. Now, credit where it's due. The royal historian on the panel, who I'll call the professor, pulls the frame back historically. She reminds everyone that nearly every person who marries into the royal family goes through a rough patch. She brings up Prince Philip being smeared as a Nazi sympathiser despite fighting for the Allies. She brings up what happened to Princess Diana. She even brings up the early tabloid treatment of Kate Middleton and her family. That's an important point, and I want to give the professor her due, because it establishes that outsider scrutiny isn't unique to Meghan. It's a pattern. But then she says the line that actually matters most in this whole segment. Of everyone who has gone through that royal initiation, Meghan Sussex has had it worse than any of them. She's been criticised for things every other royal has done without a single comment. That's not me saying that as the host of this channel. That is a royal historian, on air, on British television, stating it as fact. And then the conversation finally gets to where it always eventually has to go, because the anchor, credit to him for at least asking it directly, poses the question, Does being American hurt her? Does this come down to race? The commentator doesn't hedge for a second. She lays out the actual timeline. The very first time the public even found out Harry was seriously dating Meghan was because Kensington Palace had to issue an unprecedented statement condemning the racist and sexist undertones of the coverage and the harassment of her privacy. Sit with that, squaddies. Before the engagement, before the wedding, before a single controversy about dog names or Wimbledon security, the palace itself was already on record saying the treatment of this woman was racially charged. That statement is the actual origin point of this entire dynamic, and it is wild how often it gets left out of exactly the kind of both sides framing the anchor opened this segment with. The commentator goes further, naming specific patterns. Commentators describing Meghan's mother and her upbringing with language lifted straight from lazy coded stereotypes. Reporters reaching for the word outsider in ways they never applied to Kate Middleton, who was also a commoner marrying into the family. The professor backs this up too, talking about what she calls unconscious bias, people insisting they're not being racist while simultaneously treating Meghan as fundamentally other, suspect, different, in ways that have nothing to do with her actual behaviour. Here's what I want you to notice, though, squaddies. Even after laying out a textbook case of unfair treatment, the panel still can't fully commit to its own conclusion. The anchor pivots straight back to, well, what about the mistakes, though? Dragging Wimbledon back up like it wasn't already addressed 30 seconds earlier. This is the reflexive move you see across British media coverage constantly. Every acknowledgement of unfair treatment gets immediately hedged with, but surely some of the criticism is valid. I want you to really sit with that instinct, because it's exactly the mechanism that lets unfair criticism keep circulating forever. It's a built-in escape hatch. And look, you can hold two things as true at once. One, there is a real difference between fair critique of public spending and personal, race-inflicted hostility. Two, almost none of what's aimed at Meghan Sussex in this clip is actually the former. The commentator makes that distinction herself, saying there's a completely valid conversation to be had about royal spending broadly, pointing out that William and Kate also spent heavily renovating Kensington Palace, and nobody is demanding they justify every receipt in the tabloids the way Meghan is expected to. If the spending critique was sincere, it would apply evenly. It doesn't, which tells you the spending was never really the point in the first place. Now, here's where this segment actually earns some credit, and I want to give it because the commentator pivots to what Meghan Sussex has actually built during this period. The charity cookbook she put together with survivors of the Grenfell Tower fire. Her work with SmartWorks helping women get back into the workforce. Her advocacy connected to protecting sex workers. The widely praised guest edit of British Vogue that put working women from wildly different backgrounds on the cover instead of celebrities. None of that gets the airtime a dog's name gets. That imbalance, squaddies, is fair game. So here's where I land on all of this. This clip from years back is honestly more relevant now than when it aired, because you can trace almost every argument being made about Meghan Sussex today back to the exact same script laid out in this one panel. The demand that she perform gratitude. The insistence that any boundary she sets is proof of ingratitude or secrecy. The refusal to hold Harry to the same standard for decisions they made together. The quiet racial subtext that gets acknowledged for about 10 seconds and then instantly minimized in the same breath. The commentator said it best in the opening minute of this segment. The advice was never supposed to be for Meghan on how to be more liked. It should have been for the British press on why they can't seem to let her exist without turning every single choice into a controversy. Years later, that advice still hasn't been taken. I want to hear from you on this one, squaddies, because I think this clip is a genuinely useful time capsule. Do you think the media narrative around Meghan Sussex has actually shifted since this aired, or has it just found new packaging for the same old complaints? When you look back at this with hindsight, what jumps out at you the most? The dog's name story, the Wimbledon moment, or the way the anchor kept circling back to PR advice instead of accountability? And honestly, do you think the Diana every single one? And this community goes deeper on these breakdowns than anywhere else on this platform, and that's exactly why I love making these videos for you. If this is the kind of receipts-based breakdown you come here for, do me a favor before you go. Hit that subscribe button and tap the bell, because the firm and the rotor are not going to stop, and neither are we. There's more of this coming, and I don't want you to miss a single one. Thank you for watching, squaddies. I'll see you in the next one.